Top 10 conspiracies in 2023, some of which might actually come true. That's according to @real Ben Sellers. He's over there on Twitter, editor of Headline USA. You can visit them at headlineusa.com. And I'd encourage you to do that because there is a juicy, juicy list here. 10 conspiracies that may come true. He says, will. Let's get into them. Before we check out some additional piggyback stories that we can add on top of this. One from 60 Minutes from the author of the book called The Population Bomb, and another story from Zelensky saying that the media is now going to be under a little bit more control in Ukraine. Let's go over to the story from Ben Sellers. This comes via headlineusa.com. Sellers writes, top 10 conspiracy theories that will be validated in 2023. Published December 26, 2022. Look at this very secretive handshake from the FBI. Going to be a good story. Ben Sellers writes, there has been a lot of talk lately about the word of the year. Some say it's gaslighting. Happens to be a personal favorite of his. Others say it's goblin mode. Bizarre term linked to Kanye West and others. In the spirit of New Year's predictions, he says, I think it is conspiracy theory. Like these, it is a term that's taken on new meaning in light of current events, and one that the left establishment hegemony has desperately sought to appropriate and weaponize for its own purposes. But in the next 12 months, he writes, we will see conservatives successfully reclaim it. Conspiracy. In fact, the early adopters are already lighting the way on social media. Elon Musk said this. He was on an interview with the All In podcast, a podcast I've recommended here, especially if you're into finance. This is David Sachs, who's a co-host of the podcast. And he was in the middle of the podcast. David Sachs is a former executive at PayPal, and he had worked there during the initial era when Elon evidently was there along with Peter Thiel. And so they host a podcast, and David Sachs is now working with Elon, sort of a regrouping of the original minds, and they're working through some of the issues at Twitter. David Sachs is a very big software as a service individual, SaaS founder. So he does a lot of this work. He's helping Elon get some bearings over there at Twitter. In the middle of the podcast, Elon shows up. Okay, so they're at Twitter HQ, and they're talking about conspiracy theories. Here's what Elon says.
I mean, to be totally frank, almost every conspiracy theory that people had about Twitter turned out to be true.
Oh.
So.
Yeah. Uncomfortable laugh.
Is there a conspiracy theory about Twitter that didn't turn out to be true? So far, they've all turned out to be true. And if not, more true than people thought.
More true than people thought. Let's listen to that one more time. And you can see some of the uncomfortable laughs from everybody. This is Chamath Palihapitiya, who is sort of, a little bit more lefty than some of the others on the podcast. And he's a little uncomfortable there. And everybody's recognizing it's all true. Everything we thought was true is true.
I mean, to be totally frank, almost every conspiracy theory that people had about Twitter turned out to be true. So, is there a conspiracy theory about Twitter that didn't turn out to be true?
No.
So far, they've all turned out to be true. And if not, more true than people thought.
And wait until we see what's next. Fauci's going to have a drop. Fauci files are dropping soon. There's going to be a whole lot more. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a things aren't adding up and it's pretty obvious theorist. Yeah, all the conspiracy theorists, many of them have turned out to be true. Gretchen shared that link too. We have some more memes being shared. But the question is being asked, what is the current conspiracy theory that will be true in 6 months? Ben writes, increasingly, we are seeing the corruption of the Biden administration start to come out in the wash with growing backlash. Questions that the media tried to deny and deride in service to their agenda have since had the curtain lifted. More and more, Even averred leftist ideologues like ex-Planned Parenthood leader Lena Wen are admitting they lied about various aspects of the pandemic. Twitter files have also played a huge role in exposing the unseemly and unconstitutional collusion between U.S. spy agencies and big tech. A flurry of GOP-led investigations in the House will bring in at least a semblance of accountability back to the swamp. Conspiracy theory is the word that's being bandied about. And so I'm fast forwarding through some of this. I'll invite you to go over to Real Ben Sellers and follow and read the full article for yourself. But he says, with that in mind, here are the top 10 things that the powers that be in DC have yet to cop to, have yet to admit they are responsible for, but which will soon be impossible to ignore in no particular order. Number 1, Ben Sellers writes, top 10 2023 conspiracy that will likely be true is the role that the intel community and the Justice Department played in fomenting violence through PSYOPs on J6. It will be exposed. Sadly, in their expected counter-investigation responding to the Pelosi-run J6 committee, even House Republicans may withhold state secrets from us. But the FBI's damaging partisan conduct has generated a multitude of whistleblowing defectors who should be willing to shed light on the dubious allegations of right-wing extremism and violence at the U.S. Capitol. He says in 2017, Charlottesville was its dress rehearsal. And we've talked a lot about this here on this channel. We've talked about the various criminal charges that have been filed in some of the cases, including Thomas Caldwell's case. His lawyers have said and made the allegations in their defense filings that there were many FBI, I think ATF, even potentially DHS agents who were infiltrating the crowds. We know that guys like Ray Epps may not have been an actual Fed. I don't know. But he didn't get prosecuted for committing a lot of the same conduct that a lot of other people have been prosecuted for. So what's the difference there? Okay, we saw all sorts of missing bits of evidence where we're looking for what should be one of the most secure buildings in the entire world. They had some security footage, but not all of it. We can't see it all. And some of the stuff that we did see, we saw literal doors being opened and people being waved in as cops were getting stand down orders. They were being tapped on the shoulder, and then people were being escorted into the Capitol. And then how many of those people have been prosecuted and charged? How many of them just took plea deals because they didn't have the money and the resources to get lawyers and battle against the federal government, which just now appropriated itself something like $2 billion for J6 crimes just in this new $1.7 trillion stimulus? Nuts. So as more and more of this comes out, I think it becomes clearer and clearer by the day. Either one, the FBI, DHS, Metro PD, Capitol Hill PD, the Mint Police, DHS, all of them are grossly incompetent because they can't figure out how to protect the Capitol building on a very important day when there were already all sorts of warnings and messages about protests taking place in the area. Incompetent or complicit. Or they just said, well, you know, we just don't have to bring the National Guard out here. Hopefully everything goes okay. You get Nancy Pelosi staying there and saying on camera with her children in the area, her telling them, I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for this day. Because they knew that Donald Trump was a threat. They wanted to take him out permanently. This was a beautiful way to do that. We fast forward through conspiracy number 2. It's pandemic related. And if you want to see what Real Ben Sellers says about it, go on over to headlineusa.com and read his article. Number 3, 2023 conspiracy that is likely to come true. The scope of China's control over the U.S. government will become even clearer. We know about the various financial ties between the Biden family and the CCP. We know that other top leaders, including Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, are heavily invested in Chinese industry. But what we have yet to fully explore is the way that China-linked companies like BlackRock have also completely infiltrated the White House and are effectively writing U.S. foreign policy. Another issue we've talked a lot about here. Why does it seem like every single politician is so scared to death of China? Nobody wants to do anything about it. And same goes for all of the big tech CEOs and all the big conglomerates. Nobody wants to say anything about it. They're all petrified. Take a look at the clear understanding amongst officials in the federal government about what TikTok is and what that does to people, how that commandeers people's brains, how it's poisoning in individuals and youth all across America, how it could very likely maybe is being used as an influence operation. You just adjust the knobs on the algorithm and people start thinking differently. You understand that huge batches of data of American citizens are just being siphoned off like a straw into China. All of the politicians know it. What the heck good is the CIA, DHS, FBI, all of these people for if they can't even deal with an obvious foreign adversarial threat like that? Well, it's because they're all bought and paid for, right? They've all got deals over there. Another great point from Ben Sellers. Number 4, he writes, the true nature of David DePape's relationship with Pelosi will also be revealed. Another story that we talked about. He says, while court hearings have kept a tight lid on the evidence in the Paul Pelosi case, including the body cam footage, remember we spent time here talking about who opened the door. There were 2 conflicting police reports. One version was the cops opened the door, which makes sense because Paul Pelosi is being attacked inside his residence. He can't come and open the door. So the cops, he's under attack. They come, they open the door, they walk in, he's getting attacked with a hammer. But that was different. That's what the FBI said. Local cops didn't say that. Local cops said that Paul Pelosi opened the door, which is a strange thing because if he opened the door, why would he also walk back inside and then engage with David DePape and then get struck in the head with a hammer? If the cops are there at your front door and you open the door, don't you step outside and say there's a psycho person with a hammer inside? Very strange. Body cam footage, all of that. Very strange situation. Says that it's going to be harder for Nancy Pelosi to flex her authority after no longer being the Speaker of the House. It's very clear that DePape is no right-wing extremist. And there's more going on here. And DePape, right, we saw the FBI showing up at his residence or where he was living, and there were interesting signs and causes that they appeared to be invested in at the residence. So the narrative that this was a right-wing conspiracy, that this was a MAGA insurrectionist, this was all right before the election. They wanted that story. It was all over the place. Paul Pelosi got attacked. Nancy Pelosi was crying all over the media. He got attacked. And I'm sure she was sad. Nobody wants their husband cracked in the head with a hammer, but nobody also wants to be blamed for cracking their husband in the head with a hammer. That's what they had done. They had said through Biden that every Republican out there was a MAGA extremist unless you disavowed Trump and voted Democrat, essentially. Number 5, conspiracy theories that will be proven true in 2023. Ben Sellers writes, we will find out that Trump purloined and what's in Trump's purloined Mar-a-Lago files. The DOJ probe now is continuing on, but it switched over to a special counsel investigation by Jack Smith, the guy from the International Criminal Court. He was appointed special counsel. The DOJ is sort of no longer in official control of the Trump Mar-a-Lago investigation. Eventually, the clock's going to run out, writes Ben, and says that the CYA operation of the FBI will come out in full effect, saying that they may have been trying to cover this up, trying to regain documents. They were concerned that Trump had something that they didn't want him to have. And he says we'll learn more about that. We spent a lot of time on this as well. And we'll see. All of it is in limbo until the special counsel does something. Conspiracy theory number 6. We will learn what the Democrats intend to do with Joe Biden and who will be tapped to replace him. Will it be Michelle Obama, as I and others have long predicted? Now, Michelle has said that she doesn't want it, right? She's openly said, I'm not into it. I don't like that lifestyle. I don't want to be the subject of all that attention. But isn't that kind of what they all say every time there's an ask about this? Oh, no, I could never be president. No, that job's too much. You're silly for asking. They run like 6 months later, right? Or could it be another yet unknown figure who has been carefully vetted and groomed in secret, like her husband, Barack? Now, I was somebody who thought that Joe Biden was going to get obliterated in the midterms and then would be sort of escorted out of there. That was on the presumption that Kamala Harris would be a nice fill-in. Kamala Harris has turned out to be kind of a disaster as well. And so that's sort of, that old switcheroo, just has been sort of a bad thing. So if Michelle Obama comes in, then that means that Kamala, they've already made the decision on that and that they're not liking what they're seeing out of her. It could also go the other way, right? Michelle Obama, they could puff up the VP. Kamala Harris could get a makeover, I suppose. We'll see. Or it could be another person we don't know, or Newsom. Michelle Obama? I don't know. Number 7, we will discover the truth about the U.S.-Ukrainian partnership to develop things in Ukraine. He says that all indications are that the country is a rat nest of CIA operations. And we'll learn a lot more about Ukraine. And there was an interesting story I saw on the Ukraine front. This came over from The Hill. The Hill writes that Zelensky now signs a new controversial law expanding the government power to regulate the media. This law now allows media groups and journalists in the country to be regulated. Signed this last week on Thursday. Media and the press said this is going to have a chilling effect on free speech. Under the new law, national television and radio broadcasting, whose members are appointed by the president's administration and by parliament, will have broader authority over the media. The regulatory agency can effectively now shut down news sites that aren't registered. That's beautiful. In a statement last month, the National Union said the bill posed a threat to press freedom. They say these powers are clearly excessive. No one has yet managed to tame freedom of speech. It won't work this time either. Zelensky's administration has been accused of suppressing press freedom. He first ordered the drafting of a new law to boost media regulation 2019, the year he entered office. Drafting of a new law to boost media regulation in 2019. That's interesting. But Russia-Ukraine invasion, that happened this year, February 24th, to be specific, of 2020. Last year. Wow, I forgot what year it is. Holy crap. That's going to take a while. So you see here on February 24th, 2022, they were already drafting a new law to boost media regulation before the Russian invasion took place. But as governments usually do, crises are excuses to do whatever the heck you want. The law was passed along with several new statutes. Lawmakers passed on December 13th, was watered down. So more free speech being silenced there as well as other places. And we go back to the stories. Ben Sellers, he continues. He says, the left, one of the conspiracies that will come true in 2023 is the left's plan to normalize and mainstream this bad stuff with children. Don't like to say it for the YouTubes. The initial push to get children involved in bad things didn't work so hot for Disney and may have fallen flat. But he says that they're going to redouble their efforts to manipulate young minds by acclimating children at an early age. They can add another weapon in their quiver, cultivating ignorance and elevating racial grievances so that the plebeian class is as pliable as possible. Be vigilant, my friends. No joke on that. Number 9, Ben Sellers writes, a conspiracy for 2023 coming true is the World Economic Forum will lead the way in trying to turn humans into glorified matrix batteries. AI, metaverse, no more office culture, digital passports, CBDCs, guaranteed universal basic income, and the ever-increasing scarcity of resources, saying they're going to globalize and collectivize all nations under a one world government. And we've shared clips on the channel here of these types of statements from the World Economic Forum where they've said things. There was one clip of one individual who said that they were creating a new platform that would allow you to engage with it, almost like a software that you would just get your food from, you'd get your supplies from. So it's almost like an Amazon service, right? You go on, I'm going to order this stuff. They give it to you and it's universal, it's basic, you get all this free stuff. But in addition to measuring the value of that, right? How much that costs. So you'd get a stipend. They're also counting things like calories, and how much carbon that costs to produce and, how much supplies and materials you're using. And they can just tie that right into your passport or whatever it is the new superstructure looks like. They're building it. China has it. You have trays, you just scan your food. It tells you exactly what you ordered. Right. And you just use that on a regular basis. You've seen what they've done with COVID in various places around the world. We also have, finally, from Ben Sellers at Real Ben Sellers. He says, lastly, the final 2023 conspiracy that's coming true. As we learn about the relationship between big tech and spy agencies, we'll see that our personal cell phones and devices are tracking everything. Knowing what we know about the FBI and the CIA and how much they've been manipulating everything, is there any possible way that they're not already engaging in warrantless domestic surveillance between Google, Apple, all of the other big tech platforms already around the clock? Is there any basis in believing that they can't just turn on your camera, turn on your phone if they really wanted to? You think they could do that? Probably. Incredible piece over from Ben Sellers at headlineusa.com. I'd really encourage you to go follow him on Twitter at Real Ben Sellers. This is the title. This is the headline. This is where it came from. Very fun article. I hope he's wrong about all of it, but probably won't be, unfortunately. And we will be here continuing to cover that as the year develops. And so shout out to Ben Sellers for that great piece. Now, we also had this interesting clip that came out sort of on this vein. What is 2023 going to bring? What's it going to hold for all of us? Well, we had this interesting clip. Now, this individual that we're going to hear from is the author of a book called The Population Bomb. And he was on with 60 Minutes, and I'm going to spare us some of this. They kind of walk us through, the whole world's going to die. The story here is that these people are all focused on stopping climate change by working together, right? All of our bureaucrats assemble. Bureaucrats assemble, kind of one of those things. And they're going to solve things, but really they don't solve anything. That's why they're bureaucrats. If they solved things, they wouldn't be bureaucrats. They'd be doing something else productive and useful. But they say that they're going to fix climate change, right? And they have these big stupid meetings every year. Been doing it basically my whole life. And they say that they're going to come out with a resolution. Guess what? Hasn't happened. Nothing's changed. Everything's the same. They need more money. They need more power. They need more responsibilities. Give them more. All because this goofball wrote this book called The Population Bomb. Now, if you've been looking at modern demographics around the world, many people are saying there is no concern of human population overpopulating the planet, causing us all to die. They recognize that as populations and demographics become richer, people actually have less babies. And what that means is that the world is going through a massive population decline at some point in the future. They don't know exactly when it's going to be, but the population will cap out at a certain level and then start to decline again as the rest of the world becomes rich. And so the major crisis, according to some people who are more familiar with existential crises than I am, guys like Elon Musk, says that more important than getting to Mars is reversing the population decline. That's why he's got like 10 kids now. This person says that this is a mistake. He talked about this 50 years ago or whenever he wrote his terrible book. But now he is continuing to press this story.
Biologist Paul Ehrlich. You know that there is no political will to do any of the things that you're recommending.
Because you're nuts.
I know there's no political will to do any of the things that I'm concerned with, which is exactly why I and the vast majority of my colleagues think we've had it, that the next few decades will be the end of the kind of civilization we're used to.
In the
The end of the civilization that we're used to. The population
50
bomb.
years.
This ridiculous book that he wrote, if you take a look at what Wikipedia says, he became well known for the controversial 1968 book called The Population Bomb, which he authored with his wife, Anne. They famously stated that, quote, in the 1970s, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death in spite of any crash programs embarked now upon. They want coercion to deal with this. Eliminating tax benefits for children. He's a ridiculous dude. So, right, that's what they're talking about, right? And I think that's kind of not necessarily what they're predicting is going to happen naturally, and we have to work to stop it. I think that's what they want to see happen. They'd like to see a lot less people, a lot more control. We have to do something or we're all going to die. And guess who's perfectly prepared to do something? Guess who is a scientist who's been working on this issue for 50 years? That guy. Great. So the World Economic Forum, we'll just bring him right over, put him on the payroll. Life will be great. Okay, my friends. And so all of that is the top 10 conspiracies in 2023. And it's going to be a heck of a year. We look forward to driving through all of it with you together. I hope you join us. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.